I never thought I'd marry someone like Emma. Not because she was out of my league or anything dramatic like that. No, it was because she carried a kind of silence I couldn't quite define. You know how some people walk into a room and fill it with sound, with presence? Emma walked in like a whisper. Calm, careful, and always composed. From the very beginning, I could tell she had lived through something she wasn't ready to share. She never talked about her family. Not once. If it came up, birthdays, holidays, childhood photos, she'd just shake her head with this polite little smile and say, "It's complicated." And me? Like a damn fool, I took that at face value. I told myself, respect her boundaries. I wore that like a badge of honor. Meanwhile, she was living a whole life behind a wall I never even noticed. Support us by liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It would be great if you tell us where you are watching from. Now let's continue with the story. We met at a friend's New Year's Eve party, the kind where half the people are already drunk by 10 and everyone's pretending they don't care about midnight kisses. Emma stood by the kitchen island, sipping cider with a lemon wedge like she wasn't part of the chaos. I walked up, cracked a joke about her drink looking like it was trying too hard, and she laughed, low and genuine. That laugh felt earned, like I'd broken through something. She didn't give much away in those early conversations, but what she did offer felt intentional. She listened more than she talked, and when she did talk, her voice had weight. It made you want to lean in closer. Maybe that's what drew me in, the mystery, the quiet steadiness. I mistook it for depth. I thought it meant she was strong. What I didn't realize is that silence can also be a mask. We moved fast. By month 6, I'd all but moved into her townhouse. She never asked for help with rent, even when I offered. "You're my guest," she'd say. I found that sweet at the time. Looking back now, it was just another wall, another way to keep control. We didn't have wild fights or dramatic blow-ups. Our relationship was smooth, almost too smooth, like a lake with something dark stirring at the bottom. I'd ask about her past, just little things, like where she grew up, what her parents were like. She'd shrug and say, "We don't talk anymore." No anger, no sadness, just that blank shrug that shut the door before I could peek inside. I met none of her family before the wedding. Not one person. I brought it up once, nervous it might come off pushy. "Do you want to invite anyone? I mean family-wise." She had her hands in the sink, rinsing dishes, and without turning around she said, "No one worth inviting." That was it. No elaboration, no room for follow-up. I nodded and let it go, told myself we were building something new, just the two of us. We had a small ceremony in a rented garden, 20 people, mostly my friends and coworkers. She looked beautiful in this simple, sleeveless dress. She didn't cry during the vows, didn't even choke up. I remember thinking, she's just composed. But now, I wonder if she felt anything at all. We fell into routines fast. She worked from home as a freelance editor. I was commuting to an office downtown. Most evenings were quiet. Dinner, streaming something neither of us really watched, the occasional glass of wine. We didn't fight because I didn't push. She didn't offer, and I didn't demand. Maybe I should have. Maybe I would have seen it sooner if I had. Every other Sunday, she'd leave early, sometimes before I even woke up. She called them her recharge days. Said she needed solo time in nature to reset. Sometimes it was a hike. Sometimes a day at a spa. I never saw pictures, never heard stories. Just vague smiles, and it was nice when she came back. I didn't question it. I was the kind of husband who trusted by default. I believed in giving space. That's how I'd been raised. Don't smother, don't pry. But looking back, it wasn't space she needed. It was privacy. And there's a difference, isn't there? Space is something you create together, respectful, mutual. Privacy is something you hide behind. And Emma was hiding, even if I couldn't see it. Or maybe I wouldn't see it. There were clues. I remember one Sunday, I suggested we go for brunch together. She hesitated, said she already had plans, then quickly added, "Next weekend, okay?" She was always gentle like that, soft in her deflection. So I said sure. I always said sure. Over time, I convinced myself I preferred it that way, that we were two adults respecting each other's independence. I liked the order of our life, the predictability. There was a strange peace in not having to deal with in-laws or big family dinners. I told myself she'd open up eventually. that her past was just too painful to revisit right now. I even admired her for cutting ties if they were toxic. I wanted to believe she was protecting herself, protecting us from old wounds. But the truth was uglier than anything I imagined. It wasn't that she had no family. It was that she chose to keep them from me. She chose a version of her life that didn't include me, at least not fully. And that choice, that secret, sat beneath our marriage like rot under the floorboards. One night, a friend of mine brought up the idea of kids over dinner. Said something like, "You guys would make great parents." I looked at Emma, waiting for her reaction. She smiled politely, sipped her wine, and said nothing. Later, in the car, I asked her if she'd ever want children. She turned to me, dead serious, and said, "I already had that phase." I blinked. "What do you mean?" I asked, thinking maybe she meant nieces or nephews. "It's in the past," she said. "I don't want to reopen it." I wanted to ask more, wanted to demand more, but the finality in her tone stopped me. I told myself not to push. I told myself she'd tell me when she was ready, but she never did, and I stopped asking. Now, I see it all with such painful clarity. The way she always dodged holidays. The way she never left a paper trail. No framed photos. No old albums. Not even a single card or a letter from a sibling, a cousin, a parent. It wasn't that she was alone. It was that she chose to keep me separate from the part of her life that actually mattered. I was just the man she lived with, the man she cooked for, slept beside, shared a mortgage with. But I wasn't her real family. I just didn't know that yet. And somewhere in those quiet gaps, she built a secret life I had no part in. Every other Sunday, while I folded laundry or grocery shopped or watched football in the living room, she was living out a version of herself I'd never met. Laughing, bonding, sitting across from the people who actually belonged to her. And not once, not even out of guilt, did she think I deserved to know. It happened on one of those quiet Sundays, the kind that should have felt restful, but instead felt hollow. Emma had left early again, her recharge day, she called it, and I was killing time cleaning the apartment. I remember pausing to fix the crooked picture frame in the hallway, one of the only photos we had together, taken at a friend's wedding, both of us smiling like everything made sense. I adjusted it, stood back, and something inside me twisted. I couldn't name it then, but it was like the picture was lying to me. Something in that smile felt forced, and for the first time, I wondered if it always had. I didn't plan to go through her phone. Let me be clear about that. It wasn't some calculated betrayal or moment of anger. It was on the counter, face up, screen lit with a new notification. I happened to glance at it as I passed by. It was instinct. Reflex. One of those things your eyes process before your brain catches up. A message from a thread labeled Sunday Fam Bam flashed across the screen. The words were simple. "Can't believe how much Jake's grown. Brunch was perfect today." I stopped in my tracks, heart skipping. Sunday Fam Bam. I knew she said she had no family worth seeing. So who the hell were Jake and the rest of this so-called fam? I told myself not to open it. Told myself to walk away. That maybe it was a client group or some harmless joke. But my gut knew better. My gut knew everything before I was ready to admit it. I tapped the message. Her phone wasn't locked, and that alone struck me. She'd always been private about her devices, usually keeping them face down. But today, it was open, vulnerable, almost like it wanted to be found. Like her secret had finally gotten tired of hiding. There were photos. So many photos. Laughter frozen in stills, all taken in the same cafe over different weekends. There she was, in a floral blouse I'd never seen before, sitting beside a man I recognized instantly, her ex-husband. Not from personal introductions, of course. No, I knew him from a single old Facebook photo she'd accidentally left visible in her tagged photos. His name was Marcus. He was tall, confident, had that relaxed, suburban dad energy. And there they were, together, again and again. In some photos, their shoulders touched. In others, she leaned into him like it was second nature. And the kids, two of them, a boy and a girl, sat beside them, comfortable, familiar. The girl even called Emma Mom in one of the texts, like it was still her title. I felt something collapse in my chest. Not a dramatic, cinematic heartbreak. No, it was quieter, like a floor giving way under old weight. I scrolled back weeks, months. Every other Sunday, Like clockwork, they met. There were no spa days. No solo hikes. Just family brunches with the very people she'd told me didn't matter. The betrayal didn't come in one blow. It came in waves. Each photo, each message, each smiling emoji a sharp twist of the knife. It wasn't just that she lied. It was how easily she'd lived that lie while looking me in the eye. I paced the living room, phone still in hand, trying to make sense of it. My heart was racing, but my mind was strangely calm, like it had entered survival mode. I needed to confront her, but I also needed to understand what the hell I was looking at. I clicked on an old message thread between her and Marcus. Their conversations weren't romantic, at least not overtly, but they were intimate, comfortable, like two people who still saw each other as family. They talked about the kids, about birthdays, about upcoming brunches. And not once was I mentioned. I wasn't even a footnote in her life with them. When she walked in the door that evening, I was waiting on the couch, phone in hand. She froze when she saw me, just for a second, but it was enough. Her eyes flicked to the phone and then back to me, and in that instant, she knew. She didn't ask what I saw, didn't pretend to be confused. She just exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath for 3 years. I saw the messages, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. I saw the photos. She didn't sit down, didn't apologize. She leaned against the kitchen counter and stared at the floor, then finally said, "I didn't think you'd ever look through my phone." I blinked. That was her first response. "That's what you're worried about? That I looked? Not what I found." Her eyes finally met mine, and there was no guilt there. Just tiredness. Like I'd interrupted something she didn't have the energy to defend. "They're my real family," she said, and that word, real, punched the breath from my lungs. "You're just someone I married to feel less alone." It took me a full 5 seconds to register what she said. I felt like I'd been slapped. My mouth went dry. "So that's all I was to you? A filler? A placeholder until the table filled up again?" Her tone didn't change. "It wasn't supposed to be serious. I thought you'd leave before it got complicated." I stood up. "We've been married for 3 years, Emma. 3 years. I moved into your life. I paid bills. I planned futures with you. And you what? Just waited for it to be over." She looked away again. "I didn't want to hurt you." "That's rich," I snapped louder now. "You didn't want to hurt me, so you lied to me every Sunday for years? You let me build a life with someone who didn't even want me in it." Her silence was the worst part. There were no excuses, no tears, no attempts to fix it. Just the quiet, brutal acceptance of her truth. I was never meant to be permanent. I was never meant to know her full story. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed the overnight bag I'd used when traveling for work, and started packing. She didn't follow, didn't ask me to stay. Just stood there, arms crossed, watching me erase myself from her home. Before I left, I paused at the door and said, "You had a chance to build something new. You chose to relive your past instead. I hope it was worth it." She didn't respond. I walked out that night with nothing but the clothes on my back and the overnight bag slung over my shoulder. I didn't even bother to slam the door. There was no rage in me, just a deep, gnawing emptiness I couldn't explain if I tried. I think I expected her to come after me, or at least call out. But all I heard was the dull thud of the latch behind me and the sound of my own footsteps fading into the silence of the street. The air was thick and humid, but inside, I felt hollow, like I'd been scooped out. I drove around for nearly an hour with no destination, no music, just the sound of tires on pavement and the occasional hum of a passing car. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. I kept replaying her words in my head, each one a little dagger I couldn't pull out. "That's my real family. You're just someone I married to feel less alone." The casual cruelty of it made me sick. She didn't even flinch when she said it, just laid it out like a grocery list. Like it was something I should have known all along. How long had I been the backup plan? The stand-in? The emotional placeholder until she could quietly resume the version of her life she actually wanted? I ended up at a cheap roadside motel just outside the city. It was the kind of place that smelled like mildew and broken promises, but it had a bed and a door that locked, and that was all I needed. I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the floral print wallpaper and trying not to fall apart. There's something disorienting about grief that doesn't come from death. Nobody died that night. but it still felt like a funeral. I was mourning a version of my life I'd poured everything into. Mourning a marriage I thought was built on trust, only to realize I'd been the only one playing by those rules. I didn't call anyone. Not yet. I couldn't bear to explain it, not while it was still fresh and raw. I didn't want pity. I didn't want advice. I just needed to sit in the wreckage for a while and feel the weight of it. I spent most of that night awake, lying on my back, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun in slow, hypnotic circles. Every creak in the walls felt like a whisper of what I'd lost. Every tick of the clock reminded me I wasn't home, not anymore. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't hesitate. I didn't second guess. Something in me had hardened overnight, some protective instinct that snapped into place once the shock wore off. I wasn't going to let her coast through this without consequences. I may have been just someone she married, but I had legal rights, and I was damn well going to use them. I told the lawyer everything. How she lied, how she maintained a secret relationship with her ex-husband and their kids, how she admitted to using me for stability. He didn't react with surprise, just nodded and said, "Let's get started." I filed for divorce that same week. No delays, no waiting period. I gathered every receipt, every bank statement, every record of the things I'd brought into that marriage. The car? Mine. The furniture? Paid for by me. The savings account? Almost entirely funded from my income. She had always insisted on keeping things separate, another thing I once admired, now understood as strategic. She didn't want to be tied to me financially because she never saw me as permanent. But that strategy backfired. It meant I had leverage, and I was going to use it. When the papers were served, she didn't respond right away. No texts, no emails, just silence. For a moment, I wondered if she even cared. But then, 3 days later, she sent a single message. "I don't understand why you're being so cruel." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just confusion that I wasn't playing the role she'd written for me. Passive, gentle, willing to be discarded without a fight. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Her understanding of cruelty was warped. If removing myself from a lie was cruel, then maybe kindness was just another form of control. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, nothing fancy but mine. I moved in with a couple suitcases, a mattress, and the knowledge that I'd been used. The quiet there was different than before, not hollow, not grief-stricken, but clean. Like a blank page. I kept to myself those first few weeks, focusing on work and paperwork. I started seeing a therapist, too. Not because I was falling apart. I wasn't, but because I needed help untangling the years I'd spent pretending everything was fine. I needed someone to help me understand how I could be so blind. One session, I remember the therapist asked, "When did you stop asking questions?" That hit harder than I expected. Because the truth was, I had stopped. I stopped asking about her past. I stopped wondering where she went. I told myself it was respect, when really it was fear. I didn't want to know the truth, not deep down. I think part of me sensed that her love wasn't whole, that her affection had conditions. But I was so desperate to believe I was building something real, I ignored the signs. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not just her betrayal, but my own complicity in it. My friends reached out slowly, piecing together that something was wrong through missed calls and vague social media absences. I told them the truth in pieces, letting it drip out in conversation until they got the full picture. Most were shocked, a few were furious on my behalf. One friend, Jenna, said, "You treated her like a partner. She treated you like a placeholder." That summed it up better than I ever could. Emma never chose me fully. She chose me conveniently. And that difference, that gut-wrenching difference, is what finally snapped the rose-colored glasses I'd been wearing for 3 years. Eventually, I changed my number. Cut off the last thread of contact. She didn't fight it. I think she knew the silence between us said everything. She'd made her choice long before I ever picked up that phone. She chose her comfort, her past, her illusion of a life that never included me. And I chose to finally walk away. The court date came faster than I expected. There was something surreal about seeing her name printed next to mine on all those legal documents. Divorce filings, asset breakdowns, a marriage license now being methodically dismantled. It felt cold, clinical, like we were cleaning up after a surgery that removed something infected. And maybe that was the right analogy. The marriage had been sick long before I noticed, and now the scalpel was out. I showed up to the courthouse early, dressed in the same navy blazer I wore on our wedding day. It was a quiet, personal choice, one final symbol that what began in good faith was ending in full clarity. She arrived 10 minutes late, and I almost didn't recognize her at first. Gone was the polished, put-together Emma I knew. The woman who always had just enough lip color and never wore a wrinkle. This version of her looked dulled. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, no makeup, eyes puffy like she hadn't slept. She wore an old hoodie and black jeans like someone running errands, not facing the collapse of a 3-year marriage. And for a split second, I felt something I hadn't expected, pity. It was brief, fleeting, but it was there. Not because I wanted her back, not because I forgave her, but because I could finally see how small her world really was when the lies were stripped away. We didn't speak before the hearing. Our lawyers exchanged folders and polite, clipped greetings. Emma kept her gaze fixed on her lap. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The silence between us said enough. When the judge entered, we stood like strangers. The proceedings were mercifully quick. My attorney laid out the evidence, documentation of my financial contributions, the absence of shared assets, the clear-cut separation of our individual property. I had been meticulous. Every credit card statement, every purchase, every receipt traced back to me. She had no claim to anything. She didn't contest it. She just nodded when the judge asked if she understood. There was a pause when the judge read the final terms aloud. Emma would walk away with nothing. No alimony. No property. No access to my accounts. Nothing. She could keep her car, the one she'd owned before we met, and whatever clothing and personal belongings she wanted. Everything else was mine. There was a moment, just one, where I saw her lips tremble. Her hands, resting in her lap, curled into tight fists. The silence in that courtroom grew heavier by the second until the gavel finally dropped. Divorce granted, the judge said. Just like that, it was over. 3 years erased in a sentence. We exited through different doors. That was the agreement. My lawyer suggested it to avoid any messy hallway confrontations, and I was grateful. But fate had a different plan. As I rounded the corner of the courthouse steps, I saw her sitting alone on a bench beneath the overhang. Rain had started to fall. Light at first, then steadily heavier. She didn't move. No umbrella. No phone in hand. Just sitting there, soaked, staring straight ahead. Her hoodie clung to her shoulders, her legs drawn up like she was trying to make herself smaller. And again, that flicker of pity returned. But this time, it came with something sharper, resentment. Because she had done this. She had chosen this. Not just the marriage, but the secret keeping, the detachment, the emotional sleight of hand. She had every opportunity to be honest. To tell me about Marcus. To let me meet the kids she clearly never stopped considering hers. But instead, she built a fantasy on one side of the fence and buried me in another. I was never her husband, not in the way a partner should be. I was her soft place to land, her emotional Airbnb. And now, she was alone. As I walked past, she looked up, just once. Her eyes met mine, red and wide and hollow. She opened her mouth, like she might say something. But I kept walking. Because what could she say that would change anything? That she was sorry? That she didn't mean it? That it all just got away from her? No apology could unlive those years. No excuse could explain how easy it was for her to call someone else her real family while I sat in the shadows of her life. I reached the bottom of the steps, unlocked my car, and climbed in. The rain hit the windshield in steady, rhythmic taps. For a moment, I just sat there, watching it slide down the glass, watching her shrink smaller in the distance through the rearview mirror. I don't know how long she stayed there. I didn't wait to find out. Back home, I opened the last box I had left unpacked, the one with our wedding photo, the marriage certificate, the Christmas cards we never sent. I took each one out, one by one, and dropped them into a garbage bag. No ceremony, no fire or ritual, just disposal. That part of my life wasn't worth preserving. I didn't need reminders of what it never was. It wasn't bitterness driving me. It was closure. It was the acknowledgement that I'd been trying to water dead roots. Friends called to check in. Some offered to take me out, throw a divorce party, make jokes about freedom. I declined. I didn't need a celebration. I needed stillness. I needed to sit with what I now understood. That love without truth isn't love at all. It's performance. Costume. And I'd been applauding a show that ended long before I ever saw the curtain rise. She never tried to contact me again. Not after that courtroom exit. Not after the silence that followed. I think she knew she couldn't spin this, couldn't pull the same emotional sleight of hand that had worked so long. And part of me, maybe a cruel part, was glad. Because I didn't want to hear her voice ever again. I didn't want to sit across from her in some cafe while she twisted the narrative into something palatable. No, she could keep her version of the story. I had mine, and mine was the truth. In the weeks that followed the final hearing, life didn't explode like I thought it would. It didn't crash and burn. It unraveled, quietly, steadily, like a sweater tugged at the thread. At first, there was a strange stillness. I expected to feel relief, or maybe vengeance, but what I felt most was disorientation. Every habit I'd built for 3 years had vanished overnight. No more shared grocery lists. No more planning weekends around her moods. No more pretending I didn't notice the closed-off look she gave me whenever I said, "we" instead of "you." It was like someone had ripped out the middle of my routine and left a gaping hole. What no one tells you is that divorce, even when justified, comes with a strange sense of failure. You start replaying every moment with new eyes. I found myself lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling and wondering if there was a single night, just one, where she had actually loved me, not tolerated me, not found me useful, but truly, completely, looked at me and thought, this is the man I want to build my life with. I couldn't find it. Not in the memories. Not in the photos. Even her laughter in those early videos we took together now felt hollow. Performed. Like she was playing a part and waiting for the credits to roll. The news spread slowly through our social circles. At first, it was whispers. Friends texting me carefully worded questions. Hey, I heard something. Is everything okay? Then it turned into check-ins. A few old co-workers invited me out for drinks, trying to read my face between sips of beer. I kept things vague. Yeah, we split. Just wasn't working. That was easier than unpacking the truth. Because how do you say, she was living a second life with her ex-husband and kids while telling me her family didn't exist? It sounded insane. It was insane. And yet, it was my life. Eventually, word reached her side of the fence. Mutual acquaintances started dropping hints. Little updates I never asked for, but couldn't help overhearing. She was quiet. Withdrawn. One person said she'd gone full ghost mode, deleting photos, stepping back from social media, avoiding people entirely. Part of me thought she was ashamed. Another part thought she was just hiding until people stopped asking questions. Because if there's one thing Emma knew how to do, it was vanish. One afternoon, about a month after the court date, I bumped into someone I didn't expect. Marcus's sister, Dana. We'd only met once, at a charity event years ago, long before I ever knew she and Emma had history. But she recognized me instantly. I was at the coffee shop by my new apartment, and she walked in, stopped mid-stride, and said, "Oh, you were married to Emma, right?" I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. She gave a slow, tired sigh and said, "I figured this would happen eventually." I blinked. "Excuse me." She sat down across from me without asking, like she'd been waiting for a reason. "Look, I don't know what you know, or what she told you, but that woman has been dragging Marcus and those kids through emotional hell for years. Coming in and out of their lives. Playing happy family 1 minute, disappearing the next. It's like she doesn't know how to live without an audience." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My silence said enough. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "She brought you up once, you know. Said she married someone quiet, safe. That it helped her feel normal." "Normal," I repeated. The words sat like lead in my throat. "She never let go of Marcus," Dana said, sitting back. "Not really. But she didn't want him either. She just didn't want to feel abandoned. So she kept both of you tethered to her, like emotional insurance policies." I left that coffee shop in a haze. Dana's words haunted me, not because they shocked me, but because they fit. They explained everything Emma never would. She wasn't just dishonest. She was strategic. Her detachment, her secrecy, even the marriage itself, it wasn't about love. It was about insulation. She wanted a man who wouldn't push, who wouldn't probe too deeply, who'd fill the silence but never challenge it. And I was perfect for the role until I wasn't. There was one moment, one brief, unexpected echo of the past that nearly pulled me back. I was cleaning out the last of the shared files on my old laptop when I found a video from our first Christmas together. We'd stayed in, cooked a terrible dinner, and drank wine while watching old movies. In the video, she was laughing, really laughing, and holding up a burnt pie like it was a trophy. For a split second, I paused. My finger hovered over the delete button, and I thought, maybe she was happy. Maybe it wasn't all fake. But then I remembered. That was the same holiday she'd claimed her mother was too toxic to speak to. The same holiday she'd snuck off 2 days later for a long walk and was gone for 6 hours. The same pattern, over and over, warmth followed by distance, connection followed by evasion. So I hit delete. No hesitation. That wasn't love. That was illusion. Around that time, I started going out again. Not dating, God, no, but existing. I reconnected with people I hadn't seen in years. Old friends. A couple cousins who'd drifted during the marriage because Emma didn't like family drama. Funny how that works. Cutting off my people while sneaking off to spend time with hers. I told them the truth. Not the whole courtroom saga, but enough. Enough to say, I'm not who I used to be, and I won't be that quiet, compliant version of myself again. One night, Jenna, my friend who'd called Emma a placeholder, asked me, "Do you think she regrets it?" I thought about it for a while. Really thought. And finally, I said, I think she regrets being caught. I think she regrets losing control. But love? No. If she loved me, she wouldn't have made me invisible in my own marriage. That answer stuck with me. It hardened something that had still been soft. Because regret without change isn't growth. It's just ego licking its wounds. And I wasn't going to be anyone's regret. I was done shrinking to fit someone else's story. It's strange what stays with you after someone detonates your life and walks away. You'd think it would be the betrayal, the lies, the nights they chose someone else while you waited at home like a fool. And yes, all of that clings to your bones in the beginning. But after enough time, enough silence, it's not the act of betrayal that haunts you. It's the words. Those carefully spoken words they left you with, like a closing argument before disappearing. For me, it was only one sentence. You're just someone I married to feel less alone. I've heard it 1,000 times in my head, each repetition slicing a little deeper than the last. That sentence became my measuring stick for my self-worth, for my past, for the kind of man I swore I'd never be again. It looped in my brain at odd hours, while brushing my teeth, while standing in grocery store lines, while folding laundry in my new apartment, still half expecting her to walk through the door, even though I knew she never would. That sentence told me everything I needed to know about how little I'd meant to her. Not because I was unworthy, but because she didn't want to see me as anything more than a warm, quiet placeholder. Love would have required risk. And Emma never risked anything unless she was sure she'd win. But I wasn't broken. Wounded, yes, but not shattered. In fact, that sentence gave me clarity I didn't know I needed. It told me the exact weight she'd assigned to me in her life. And once I accepted that weight, 0, I was free to put her down and walk away without dragging her memory behind me like some haunted suitcase. Still, I had one last loose thread to tie off before I could fully move on. It happened in early spring, nearly 6 months after the divorce. I was walking through a weekend farmer's market downtown, sunlight warming the back of my neck, hands full of produce and coffee. I let my guard down. Life had found rhythm again. I had friends, a routine, even a bit of hope that not every relationship had to end like mine. And then I saw her, Emma, across the plaza, walking alone, dressed in that same rust-colored coat she used to wear on our Sunday mornings together. She was thinner, pale, hair pulled up in a messy bun that looked like she hadn't had the energy to care much. She saw me. I know she did. Our eyes met for just a second. Enough for the entire memory of our marriage to flood back in one heavy wave. She hesitated. I saw it. She wanted to come over. She even took a step forward. But I didn't move. I didn't wave. I didn't offer her a smile or a safe place to land. I just looked at her. And maybe that silence, the absence of reaction, was the loudest thing I could have given her. After everything, I didn't owe her anything. Not comfort, not closure, not friendship. I turned and walked away. But later that week, something strange happened. A letter showed up in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address. I knew it was her the moment I saw the handwriting. I stood in my kitchen, letter in hand, debating whether to open it. My therapist had warned me about emotional relapse, the temptation to return to people who wounded you, just for the sake of answers. But I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I already knew the truth. I opened it anyway. It was short. Only a page. She didn't apologize, not directly. She wrote, "I thought I could have both lives. I thought I could make you and them fit inside one version of me. I was wrong. You didn't deserve that." No signature. No plea for forgiveness. Just that. For a moment, I considered tearing it up. But instead, I folded it carefully and tucked it in the back of a drawer, not because I wanted to hold on to her, but because it was proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the distance, the lies, the emotional sleight of hand. She'd written it in ink. A few weeks later, her daughter, Olivia, I think her name was, messaged me on Facebook. It was the kind of message that came from a place of guilt and confusion. She was 17, I think. Too young to understand the intricacies of what Emma had done, but old enough to know her mother had hurt someone deeply. "I just wanted to say I liked you," she wrote. "I don't know why Mom couldn't be honest, but I always thought you seemed kind." That one almost broke me. Not because it was sad, but because it was honest in a way Emma never had been. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit for 2 weeks. Then I wrote back, simply, "Thank you. That means more than you know. I wish you all the best." And I meant it. That girl didn't ask for any of this. She didn't deserve to be a pawn in her mother's emotional chess game. I owed her the decency of kindness, even if her mother hadn't shown me the same. That was the last thread. After that, I changed my number permanently. I deleted the folder on my hard drive labeled Emma. I unsubscribed from the emotional newsletters of our marriage. I stopped checking to see if she'd emailed. I stopped wondering what she was doing every other Sunday, because none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was this: I survived it. I got out with my dignity intact. I walked away from a woman who saw me as a tool, not a partner. And in doing so, I became the kind of man who'd never let that happen again. So now, when people ask if I'd ever get married again, I don't flinch. I don't say never. I say, only if it's with someone who sees me, not someone who pities me, not someone who needs a placeholder or a prop. Someone who looks at me with both eyes open and says, "You. Just you." And if that doesn't happen, I'm okay with that too. Because peace, I've learned, is not found in having someone beside you. It's in knowing you didn't abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. And I've already done that once. Never again. If you've ever had someone make you feel like a placeholder in your own life, know this: you're not alone, and you're not powerless. The truth might hurt, but it also sets you free. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who made you feel invisible? Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more real stories like this to light. See you soon in the next story.